Hello and welcome to Eavesdropping at the Movies. I'm Mike.
And I'm Jose.
And we're talking about Jade, which I'd never heard of, but you seem to be fairly keen on.
Well, I saw it when it came out, and it was one of those films that was a terrible flop, but that stayed with me ever since. And the film is what, 96? 95?
95.
95. So that's a lot of years to be in your head and be, a flop. And actually, I thought for a long time, and I still think that maybe the main reason why the film continues to resonate for me, I mean, my overall feeling is that it's a very bad film I love. And the main reason why I love it is because of Linda Fiorentino.
She's wonderful. She has a real style, and she kind of carries the tone of the film in her smoky sort of looks, and the hair draped over her eye and all that sort of stuff.
Yes, but also in her acting. I mean, the two moments that really stayed with me, that touched me in the film, actually the only moments that touched me emotionally, were her doing. Yeah, so, she is to me like a great figure in cinema, on the basis of, very few memorable performances. I mean, I remember her from After Eight, the Scorsese film, and then she was absolutely fantastic.
After Hours, was it?
Sorry, After Hours, yeah. Did I say After Eight? You see, I'm tired now. She was in After Hours, and then she was in The Last Seduction, which I think is one of the great noirs of all time, really, the John Dahl film. And this film, really, that's kind of what I remember her for. I can see, that she's also in Men in Black and Dogma and so on.
Those are the two films that I know her from. I don't know her from anything else.
Well, you must see The Last Seduction.
But she also, like, in those films, she leaves a great impression. I mean, she's a really wonderful sort of centering presence in Dogma, which I know you don't like Dogma, but the kind of the wildness and the madness and the kind of the poop monster and all the rest that goes on around her. She has this kind of very calm, centered sort of. She's the straight man to all the weirdness, and she really works. So let's tell you what Jade is about. It's written by Joe Esterhazy, who is one of the big name screenwriters of the 90s. He wrote a lot of erotic thrillers like these. He wrote Showgirls in particular.
He was the highest paid screenwriter of his time, and then subsequently accused, is it MCA, the big talent agency, of ruining his career. But there was a period, and this falls within that period, where he was, the highest paid screenwriter in Hollywood.
Yeah, his Wikipedia page has some of the figures for the script he received. So Big Shots in '87 was sold for $1.25 million. Basic Instinct $3, Showgirls $2, and Jade, he was paid $1.5 million for a 2-page outline, which shows kind of how big he was by this point. And apparently he also felt that William Friedkin changed the script so much he almost took his name off it.
And it's ostensibly true, because I read somewhere else that Friedkin acknowledged this, and that it's his favorite film, ostensibly, that's kind of is very interesting, because I think the screenplay's a mess.
I think the screenplay is by far the worst thing about it. But actually, it's one of those films where I think the fact that the screenplay is so bad is in part what's enjoyable. And I don't mean that in an uncharitable sense, and I don't mean that in that, I take pleasure in it being so bad that it's good. But I think, this kind of film, a proper erotic thriller, how long's it been since I've seen one of those? Like, it's a proper kind of early 2000s Channel 5 late night steamy erotic thriller they used to put on Channel 5, when they had no programming to get viewers in. And I thought, God, this is great. I really love this sort of thing, and it speaks to its era so well. Like, this is when these films were coming out, and this is how they felt. So it's about a murder. And David Caruso is the cop, or he's the assistant DA who's investigating it, and he seems to know, a couple of the people who get involved. There's a lawyer played by Charles Parmenteri, who's fantastic. Linda Fiorentino is his wife, That's how you kind of initially get to know her. And there's a kind of a high level rich person sex ring, and there's prostitution, and there's people having sex with people that they shouldn't, and this all kind of starts to come out. But I mean, in terms of actual detail of sort of who discovers what and how things turn out, it is, as you say, a complete mess. And which, including by the end, the very final twist of who actually committed the murder happens in the last seconds, and you're going, "Oh, okay, he was never a suspect. That makes no sense," but it's just right for the film. I felt because it just.
Well, I don't feel that. I think it's wrong for the film.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that the film. So I love it, in spite of all of its faults, but its faults are key ones, because I think this had the potential to be a great film, and it really, and to me, it's just a film I love very much that is a complete mess. And I think part of the problem is there's too much testosterone around it. Yeah, like the story, in my view, needs to be Jade's story. Yeah, and actually, it's not. Right? It's kind of, theoretically, it's the story of the policeman, though actually, he's got no agency in it at all. Things just seem to happen. He never really seems to discover anything, right? So it's not his story, really. And at the end, it ends up becoming the husband's story, which you don't see why. And actually, it would have been a different kind of film had it been really the husband's story, right? Someone who, might be driven insane with jealousy, by his wife's doing. Except he only discovers his wife's doing 3/4 of the way through the film, really. So, yeah.
Well,
so
well,
really,
as far as you know, like what the twist says is he knew all along because he's the one who committed the murder right at the beginning, and he committed the murder because he thought, oh, well, this is all going to get out and ruin both of us. That's what the last line of the film tells you, the last scene.
My understanding is slightly different in the sense that he knew about the first person, but he didn't know about all the rest. He didn't know, that she gets off on it, that she finds freedom and joy and power in this sex with other men.
Good point.
And isn't that a great story, really? And instead, what happens at the end is the film pulls the rug from under her and imprisons her with a psychopath. Yeah, with a kind of a punitive, sadistic psychopath, right? So it's almost like the film's message changes halfway through, right? And it takes a story away from her and loads it onto him, which I think is a big mistake. I think the film could have been great, had it been, about, this woman's desires, really, yeah. So
the scene in which she goes to David Caruso after this has kind of come out, that she is the kind of centerpiece of this sex ring and was having sex with powerful men for money, and she describes what she got out of it, that it was her choice, is a really powerful sort of performance. And it's a great kind of few lines of dialogue that express that she's not the victim in this.
Yes. I thought that was wonderful. And also the contrast between that and the first sex scene with her husband, which is really plodding and painful for her, though really it's painful for her just because he's so boring doing it. Yeah, you get a sense. And, she's almost crying at how boring it is, yeah? Yeah? You have like this little tear. I thought that was a wonderful moment, really. Because, it's not tears from physical brutality, because you see her do all kinds of other things with people. It's almost tears out of, like, sadness that she's getting so little pleasure out of it that he can't give her that kind of pleasure. So I thought that was, it has moments like that are just astonishing. And then what I also like about it, I think my weakness, really, is that I really love richly produced films. Yeah, and this has all that money can buy, right? Like, it has the best, one of the most famous cinematographers of the period, Andrew Bartowak. It's got one of the most famous set designers. Is it Alex Tavoularis? So it's got Bartkowiak, Alex Tavoularis, Joe Esterhaz doing the writing, Bob Evans kind of doing the producing, and he produced The Godfather and Chinatown and so on. Yeah, it was a super expensive film. I think it cost $50 million. So there's a lushness to it. It's got fantastic actors, not a star amongst them, yeah, but actually it's got a great cast, and I would include in that David Caruso, who at the time had become a huge star on television through, I think it was NYPD Blues. Um, and this was meant to make him a film star, and he got terrible reviews, and it didn't quite make him. Well, it didn't. It stalled his film career completely. But I think he's very good, except
Yeah, I
he's
liked him
given
a lot.
very little to do. So the film has real texture and real sensuous pleasures, and Friedkin as a craftsman is, there's no doubt about his accomplishments. Friedkin as a director, I think, is a different story because he doesn't have control over the story he's telling, right? And some of the things drove me absolutely nuts, really. So for example, I hated the use of Chinatown in this film. And actually, the use of Chinatown in this film reminded me a little bit of the way that Latin America was deployed in Sorcerer. I mean, here it's just used for local color. It's used in relation to, the stereotype of Chinatown, which is mysterious, unknowable, a law unto its own. But even those elements aren't kind of exploited, right? I mean, if you see the bit where they go into the theater, there's the kitchen, but then there's a nightclub, and then there are performers on stage, and they run through it. If you compare that to what Hitchcock does with similar scenes, where they interrupt a showing at the cinema or on say, I mean the creation of tension, of the performers commenting on the action. I mean, there's so many things, so many elements, and so many dynamics that you could create in a context like that. And this feels really thin and unthought through.
Yeah. It also makes the car chase his most boring yet because he just tries to drive through the Chinese New Year, and obviously they get very pissed off, and it's an obstacle that slows them down, and there's nothing exciting to it. It really...
And it's kind of offensive because you think, all these generations of Chinese Americans, and none of them speak English?
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty offensive. It's really Orientalist, this film. But it's also in some ways entrancing, and actually I was thinking about it because I was saying, can the film be as bad as you keep on saying it is if you've watched it now 3 times with pleasure and you wouldn't mind seeing it again? And actually, well, my answer to that is yes, it can't be that bad, but actually, let's give credit also where credit is due, because it looks fantastic. It sets this mood and this tone, and and it has a richness and so on,
When I started watching it, about sort of half an hour in, when I realised, because I really didn't know anything about it, and so half an hour in I'm learning, kind of what this film is and what its style is and tone, and I was thinking, God, this is a proper thriller, and I thought it's easily Friedkin's most likeable film so far.
Yes.
It's in terms of its style, the ease with which I kind of got into it and understood the characters. It had this kind of cartoony element because it's so heightened and sort of silly and sexual. It's got jokes as well. I mean, we've constantly been saying, or you've constantly been saying, there's not a single laugh in these films. This one's got jokes, and I really enjoyed them. The play between the cops, the detectives, the older one in particular, has always got something to say, and I enjoyed that.
I liked all of that as well, except then there were other things that bothered me. So in the supporting cast, for example, like Richard Crenna's very good, but then you have Michael Biehn in a film, and this is what you do with him? I mean, he's completely wasted, and everything that he represents is wasted. He's not even shot to look nice, which is, one of his gifts to cinema, in the Terminator and Aliens films and so on, is he looks great. Well, not in this, he doesn't even give you that, right? Yeah. So, it's kind of weird in that respect, actually. How can you lose control of a story like that, really? Like, where, you don't even know who the protagonist is. The story's called Jade, but it's not her story. I mean, to some extent, it's about her, and this is where the worst elements of the film come in. So, for example, towards the end, there's that scene where she's having sex with a young man whom you don't even know who he is, or yeah. But just as the killer is about to get her, there's a sex scene, and you get the feeling they just plonk this sex scene into the film because they need a sex scene, right? They need something that will turn the audience on. So they have like this bodybuilder type, who you've never seen before and won't see again, having sex with her, yeah, and she doesn't enjoy it. But in the meantime, kind of you get all this sexual imagery of her. It feels like so sexist, piggy, mechanical, yeah.
It's funny. I mean, I thought it was kind of interesting and dark, although ultimately disappointing as well when you consider the film should be about Jade. That the film ends with her being turned into a sort of sexual prisoner, like the informant in To Live and Die in L.A. At the end of this, it's revealed that the husband, Charles Palminteri, is the killer, and he has discovered that his wife is Jade and that she is kind of a sexual sort of demon and whatnot. And he says, I killed this guy because I knew he's going to blackmail us. She's now stuck with this psychopath, as you say. And he says, next time we make love, introduce me to Jade. He wants the dark side and stuff. So the thing that was free for her, through which she enjoyed power and sex, is twisted at the end, and it's a really dark moment. But you think, oh, it's just a dark moment. Like, it's just there to leave you with that final kind of punch in the stomach. And actually, the film's not on Jade's side, really. Whereas actually, up until then, you feel to some degree it kind of is. Or at least you understand her, but then it turns what she is against her.
I felt it was nasty.
You mean nasty to the character, or a nasty kind of thing to watch?
Nasty to the character, and a real disservice to the film. Yeah, it comes out of a nastiness, because so on the one hand, I think Friedkin is definitely entranced by darkness, right? And I also detect a kind of interest in S&M, and so on. Yeah. But again, that could be turned into pleasure or freedom or or power but there's something very sexist and brutal and dark-edged about turning the tables on her at the end of the film. So something, that she found a liberation from a marriage she was trapped in, all of a sudden, is her prison. Yeah, she ends up entombed with a psychopath, right? I mean, that's terrible.
Yeah. And, well, I suppose the point that I'm making is that it just feels cheap. It's sort of unnecessary, and it's there because it's a dark twist. But then the thing is, this is the kind of film where I expect all of that stuff, really. I expect kind of dark twist to happen for no reason. I expect things to happen just because they are spectacular or sexy, or like that's why I don't mind that the plot is nonsensical, because it's there to hang moments on.
Well, I mind because if you're making claims for Friedkin as a great director, which certainly a lot of my friends are, this film fails the test.
Yeah.
I mean, you could see how he makes an interesting shot, but if you can bring out all of these nuances, or all of these possibilities, I mean, I think, for example, the Chinatown setting had so many possibilities, right? And then it just becomes something almost racist, actually, because, he's not kind of exploiting them. If you can't kind of, bring in to cohesion a narrative that only really has kind of three main people, really, then it's a problem, So I think all of the things that you're describing is, I think, what still makes it enjoyable in spite of it not being a very good film. But it doesn't deny the fact that this could have been a great kind of erotic thriller, right?
Well, the thing for me though is that I don't think I know a single great erotic thriller. I don't associate them with quality.
Oh well.
Yeah, what do you say are the great erotic thrillers?
Well, to me, something like Double Indemnity would rank right up there.
Is that an erotic thriller?
Yes. I mean, you might not think so, but like Barbara Stanwyck in that Angora sweater, kind of, with that anklet, kind of raced men's pulses.
Fair enough.
Yeah, and it's sex that drives Fred McMurray in it, doesn't it?
Well, are there erotic thrillers from this era that you would count as great? Is Basic Instinct one?
I love Basic Instinct, yes, indeed.
But is it a great? You love Jade, but Jade's not a great film. Is Basic Instinct a great film?
To be fair, I can't answer that because, I haven't seen Basic Instincts yesterday. Yeah. I thought it was a great film when I saw it, and it's definitely one of the films that I saw, several times at the theater when it came out. Now, do I think it's a great masterpiece of cinema? I don't know, right? But I actually think that this is not even a good erotic thriller.
Yeah.
I mean, you can like various things in it, and there's certainly a lot of things to appreciate. But again, I mean, I think, what I love about it is the production values and Linda Fiorentino. I mean, those are to me the outstanding elements of it.
Yeah.
Right? Kind of, there's a lot of weaknesses for the rest. I mean, I didn't like the chase scene. I also thought it was pointless. Like, you don't quite know what's at stake in it, really. So, and that final bump into the river, I thought, oh, well, that's clever in the sense that they probably spent a lot of time doing something unusual. But actually, the car being pushed into the river really adds nothing to the story except, yeah.
Yeah, it's just like a final murder attempt on him. But, yeah. Well, that's why I'm saying I never associate these films with any kind of quality, despite the fact, as you say, this was an expensive film. It's cost $50 million. I do kind of feel like this whole era of the kind of soft focus, steamy, richly produced erotic thriller, I can't think of greatness that it produced. It produced tone and steamy moments, and it's something that we look back on and kind of laugh at. And these films are there to titillate, and
I really do. Let me refresh my memory, but I don't
get the pulses racing. And as you say, like that last moment is all about just the shock of the twist, and it doesn't actually have to mean much. So it was very hard for me to be disappointed by it because I didn't expect much.
Well, I expected more. There's so many, I love The Last Seduction. I love Basic Instincts. There were, more interesting ones, like A Kiss Before Dying. I think this is more like, what's that other Bob Evans produced one?
Sliver, 1993.
That's right.
Another Joe Esterhazy one.
Sorry? Yes. So this is more, on that level.
Where do you think this fits into Friedkin's body of work? Do you see kind of, relationships between this and earlier films?
Yes. I mean, so we'll talk about this later when we talk about The Exorcist. But, I've been amazed. So I have now seen Cruising, The Boys in the Band, The Exorcist, Bug, To Live and Die in LA, and this one, yeah. And the only happy ending so far is in The Exorcist, right? That's relative, right? So that's a pattern, right? There are also, I think, recurring patterns about power and control, and being out of control. There's a real obsession with the underside of life, yeah? So either crime or sex or, or religion or, he's interested in the dark side of all of those things. I also think there's, within all of this great technical skill, there's also a brutishness or a lack of, I was going to say taste, but you know, it might be better put delicacy or nuance. Yeah, that I see as a recurring. Yeah, he's interested in shock moments. Yeah, fisting and cruising.
Do you think that his interest in the sort of underbelly of human existence, human behaviour, is substantial? Is he interested in why people behave the way they do and why they, why there is a difference between the way they act privately and publicly and that sort of thing? Or is it just this stuff is titillating and it's exciting to look at, excites audiences, and actually there's nothing much deeper to why he's interested in it? He likes the shock and the spectacle.
Well, having seen The Exorcist recently, there's no question that he likes the shock and the spectacle, you know. And I could imagine many months and many meetings went into just the creation of that image where Linda Fiorentino wears the stocking, right?
Yeah.
So he's definitely, you know, he's interested in those brutish shocks. I think there's no question about that. However, you know, I was thinking about it actually because I'm really enjoying watching, all of these Friedkin films, together. You know, because I mean, I think so. Part of the argument against auteurism really is that you then tend to read each film, you know, in the light of, you know, what these films have in common, rather than, you know, enjoying the film or encountering the film on its own terms, on its own. And actually, I think, at least for me, I don't think that's true because, you know, I think I mean, my memory's so bad that actually I feel almost in every encounter with a film is on its own terms, right? Because I can barely remember, you know, what I saw yesterday, much less what I saw 40 years ago. But I found a real value in actually seeing the films together like this, because patterns do emerge, and they're interesting patterns. You know, and actually, you know, there's almost like refusal to give an audience a happy ending. It's a really interesting thing. I can't think of it in anyone else. Yeah, that film after film after film, he makes the not only the hard choice but the unpleasant choice. Yeah, he removes joy.
Yeah.
He dooms people. He gets them all killed even when they think they've escaped. Yeah. Like so despite almost everything I've said, there's something about the imagery, about Fiorentino, you know, actually about his mise en scène that is very entrancing, you know. So it's
that's where the pleasures are. It's in the milieu that it builds, and the performances, and the tone that it sets, and all of that. And that's what I loved about it, and that's why I said, you know, actually this is really likeable. It kind of, because it's a film that wants you to take pleasure in it, which is possibly something that is difficult to say about a lot of his other things, a lot of his other films that I've seen so far. You know, they maybe don't want you to have a bad time, but they want to kind of put you through the ringer to some degree. And this isn't like that. This is one that wants you excited, you know, and wants you interested. And so that's why I think I come out thinking, yeah, this is likeable. I mean, even compared to like To Live and Die in LA, which was lighter in some respects than the other things we watched so far. I had to work with the film to have a good time. Whereas this is like straight up, you know, the camera turns the stairs and you see that mask and the music's going. I can't remember what the piece is, but it works so wonderfully. And it's like, oh, this is that kind of film, you know. And there's stuff strewn about, and there's glossy blood coming from underneath a painting. Glossy blood, who's seen that before? Like metallic blood, you know.
Yeah, it looks smashing. I think there's no question about that.
I suppose in the context of the rest of the work that I've seen, it feels trifling is too insulting, but it feels minor compared to the rest of his work.
This film.
Yeah.
Well, you see, the thing is that I'm beginning to think all of his work is minor. So, I mean, I'm kind of outraged, really, that anyone should think something like The Exorcist is a masterpiece of the cinema. So I think, you know, to me, he's a really skilled director, you know, who knows how to work with form incredibly well. He makes every shot interesting, but he doesn't make every shot count.
Yeah. Still, though, worth a look, Jade. It's good fun.
Yeah. In spite of that, I love it. So I do recommend it. With a warning that I think women will find it really sexist, and I think with good reasons, really. Yeah. So there you go. We are eavesdropping at the movies, and we are on
Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, and YouTube. On social media, we're on Facebook and Twitter at Eavesdrop Movies, and the website is eavesdroppingatthemovies.com.
Thank you very much.
Next time, The Exorcist.